In the year 2472, the stars no longer felt like home to humanity. For decades, Earth and its colonies had reached out into the galaxy with open hands, eager to trade, learn, and share. But the Galactic Council, the ruling body made up of ancient alien species, had grown wary. They watched as humans built faster ships, settled harsh worlds, and questioned old laws. To the Council, this was not progress. It was defiance. The final decision came without warning. One morning, every human representative across the galaxy received the same message. Appear before the High Conclave on the neutral world of Xylos Prime. Among them was Daniel Porter, Earth's youngest ambassador and a man known for his calm voice and steady mind. He boarded his shuttle with a knot in his stomach, sensing this was no ordinary summons. Xylos Prime was a city of glass spires and floating gardens, built by the Varelians centuries ago. The council chamber sat at the planet's heart, a vast dome where light bent in strange colors. There Daniel found himself standing alone on a raised platform, surrounded by towering figures. The Varelians, tall and silver-skinned, watched with cold eyes. The Korthans, armored and silent, stood like statues. Dozens of other species filled the galleries, their whispers echoing like wind through stone. The Grand Arbiter, a Varelian named Jalren, spoke first. His voice was smooth but sharp, like ice cracking underfoot. He listed humanity's crimes: unauthorized mining in protected zones, developing weapons without council approval, and worst of all, refusing to submit to genetic oversight. "You breed chaos," Jalren said. "Your kind spreads like fire through dry grass. You do not respect order. You do not honor peace." Daniel tried to speak. He reminded them of human aid during the Myrel famine, of shared research on dark matter propulsion, of the thousands of human doctors who served on plague-stricken worlds. But his words fell like pebbles into a deep well. The council had already decided. The verdict was exile. All human colonies outside the Sol system were to be abandoned within 6 months. Earth itself would be quarantined, no ships in, no ships out. Any human vessel found beyond the Sol border after the deadline would be destroyed on sight. There would be no appeal. Daniel returned to his ship numb. He sent the news across every channel. On Mars, on Titan, on distant Epsilon Eridani, humans stared at their screens in disbelief. Families packed what they could. Factories shut down. Schools closed. Panic spread faster than any virus. Among those receiving the order was Captain Elena Ruiz. She stood on the bridge of the freighter, Horizon's Edge, docked at the orbital station around Proxima Centauri b. At 38, she had spent half her life in space. Her dark eyes scanned the message again and again as if hoping the words would change. Around her, crew members moved like ghosts, their faces pale. "We're not criminals," muttered Chloe Dunn, her young pilot, fists clenched at her sides. "We just wanted to live." Elena didn't answer right away. She walked to the viewport and looked out at the blue-green curve of the colony world below. Millions lived there. Farmers, teachers, engineers, children who had never seen Earth. Now they had to leave it all behind, but there was no choice. The Council's warships already patrolled the outer lanes, their weapons hot. Resistance meant annihilation. Over the next weeks, the exodus began. Thousands of ships, freighters, passenger liners, mining haulers, even private yachts gathered in loose fleets. They carried not just people, but seeds, data cores, medical supplies, and fragments of culture. Books, music, family photos. Everything that made them human. Elena's ship became a command node by accident. Her calm voice and clear orders drew others to her. Soon she was coordinating fuel transfers, plotting jump routes, and calming frightened civilians over open comms. She worked with Dr. Leo Grant, a quiet xenobiologist who had once studied alien ecosystems on 3 different worlds. Now he was helping design emergency life support protocols for overcrowded vessels. "We're heading into the Veil Nebula," Leo told her one night, his voice tired but steady. "It's the only place the Council won't follow." The Veil Nebula was a swirling mass of gas and radiation on the galaxy's edge. Official star charts marked it as uninhabitable. No sane species went there, but that was exactly why it was safe. The Council saw it as a tomb. Humans saw it as a chance. As the last ships left Proxima space, Elena stood on the bridge again. Behind her, the colony lights faded into the distance. Ahead, the nebula loomed like a storm cloud. She gave the order to jump. The fleet vanished into the unknown. Inside the veil, chaos reigned at first. Navigation systems glitched. Radiation alarms blared. 2 ships collided in the dark, their wreckage drifting like broken bones. Morale sank lower with each passing hour. Some captains talked of turning back, of begging the council for mercy. But Elena refused to give up. She broadcast daily messages, not as a commander but as one of them. "We are not lost," she said once, her voice clear over static. "We are choosing our own path. That's what humans do." Slowly, order returned. Engineers like Marcus Bell jury-rigged shield harmonics to block the worst of the radiation. Chloe Dunn mapped safe corridors through the nebula's currents. Leo Grant discovered that certain algae strains, when genetically tweaked, could absorb harmful particles and recycle air more efficiently. Hope, fragile but real, began to grow. After 3 weeks, they found it, a small rocky moon orbiting a dim red dwarf. It had no name on any chart, no atmosphere, no water, but it had stable ground and mineral deposits, and it was theirs. They called it New Haven. As the first landing shuttles touched down, Elena stepped onto the gray surface. The sky was a swirl of violet and crimson from the nebula above. She knelt and pressed her palm to the cold stone. This was not Earth, it was not home, but it could become one. Back on the ships, people watched through viewports. Children pointed. Elders wept. No one spoke of the life they'd lost. Instead, they talked of what they would build. The Galactic Council thought exile would break humanity. They were wrong. In the silence of the veil, among the stars they were told they could not have, humans began to rebuild. Not just shelters and ships, but something greater. They did not know it yet, but the seeds of an empire had already taken root. Life in the Veil Nebula was hard, but humans were used to hard things. After the first landing on New Haven, the real work began. There was no air to breathe, no water to drink, and no soil to grow food. Everything had to be made from scratch or pulled from the bones of broken ships. Yet no one complained, not out loud at least. They had been cast out, but they were still alive, and that meant they could fight. Elena Ruiz walked the surface every day, her boots crunching on gray rock. She wore a patched pressure suit, its seals fraying at the edges. Around her, crews worked in shifts, dragging metal beams from crashed freighters, welding shelters together and drilling deep into the moon's crust for ice. Inside those shelters, children slept on stacked cots while adults took turns watching the air recyclers, making sure the algae tanks stayed green and bubbling. Leo Grant spent most of his time in a makeshift lab built inside a cargo container. Wires snaked across the floor and screens flickered with data. He had brought samples of every plant, microbe, and fungus he could carry from the old colonies. Now he mixed them with local minerals and nebula-filtered water, testing what could survive. One morning, he called Elena over, his eyes wide behind smudged glasses. "I think I've got it," he said, holding up a flask filled with thick green liquid. "This strain, it eats radiation like sugar. It cleans the air and makes oxygen. We can scale it up." Elena didn't smile often, but she did then. That algae became the heart of New Haven's life support system. Within weeks, they lined the walls of their main dome with glowing green panels. The air grew cleaner. People stopped coughing. For the first time since exile, they could take off their masks indoors. But survival wasn't enough. They needed unity. The fleet had arrived as scattered groups, miners from Titan, scientists from Ganymede, soldiers from Mars. Old rivalries simmered beneath the surface. Some wanted to build a democracy. Others argued for martial law. A few even whispered about leaving New Haven and striking out alone. Elena knew division would kill them faster than radiation. So she called a gathering in the central dome. No titles, no ranks, just people standing in a circle under flickering lights. She spoke plainly. "We're not Earth anymore," she said. "We're not Sol, we're something new. And if we don't trust each other, we'll die alone in the dark." Her words stuck. A vote was held. Not for a president or a council, but for a simple promise: to share, to protect, and to build together. Elena was chosen as provisional leader, not by power but by trust. With that trust, progress came faster. Marcus Bell, a wiry engineer with grease-stained hands, turned scrap metal into power generators. He rigged fusion cores from old ship engines, linking them to geothermal vents deep below the surface. Soon New Haven had steady electricity. Lights stayed on all night. Heaters kept the cold at bay. Chloe Dunn, once just a pilot, became something more. She mapped the nebula's currents, finding safe lanes through the swirling gas. Her charts allowed supply runs between New Haven and other outposts, tiny habitats built on asteroids or hollowed-out comets. She flew every mission herself, her small scout ship darting through radiation storms like a bird through rain. Food remained a problem. Hydroponic farms struggled under weak artificial light. Then a young botanist named Nate Rivera discovered that certain fungi, when grown in irradiated soil, produced edible tubers rich in protein. They tasted like chalk, but they kept people fed. Meals became a shared ritual. Everyone ate the same thing from the same pot. As months passed, New Haven grew. Domes connected by pressurized tunnels. Workshops hummed with activity. A school opened and a repurposed shuttle bay, where elders taught children math, history, and how to fix a broken oxygen valve. There were no luxuries, but there was dignity. Then came the first crisis. A Corthan scout ship, sleek, black, and silent, was spotted on the nebula's edge. It didn't attack. It just watched. Everyone froze. The council hadn't forgotten them. Elena called a security meeting. Ryan Cole, a former Marine with a sharp mind and sharper instincts, argued for building weapons. They'll come back, he said. Next time it won't be just watching. But they had no guns, no missiles, no warships. Only freighters and hope. Leo had an idea. What if we don't fight them head-on, he asked. What if we make the nebula itself our weapon? He and Marcus worked for days, modifying drone probes to emit pulses that mimicked the nebula's natural interference. When tested, the pulses scrambled sensors and navigation systems. A ship flying blind in the veil would be lost or worse, torn apart by gravitational eddies. They deployed the drones along the perimeter. The next time a Corthan scout appeared, it vanished within hours. Its last transmission a burst of static. No one knew if it crashed or fled, but it didn't return. That small victory changed everything. Humans stopped seeing themselves as victims. They were survivors, yes, but also builders, thinkers, fighters. They began to innovate not just to live, but to thrive. In a deep cavern beneath New Haven, workers uncovered something strange, smooth walls covered in symbols no one recognized. Leo studied them for weeks. They weren't random. They were instructions, star maps, energy diagrams, even blueprints for machines that bent space. This place had been used before long ago by someone else the galaxy had cast aside. The discovery lit a fire in them. If others had stood here and defied the stars, so could they. By the end of the second year, New Haven was no longer a refugee camp. It was a home. Ships came and went. Factories produced tools, clothing, even simple medicines. Children played in the corridors, their laughter echoing where silence once ruled. Elena stood again on the surface one evening, watching the nebula swirl above. She thought of Earth, of the oceans and forests she might never see again. But then she looked back at the dome glowing softly in the dark and felt no regret. They had been exiled to die. Instead, they chose to build. And from that choice, something mighty was beginning to rise. Peace never lasted long in the Veil Nebula. For 2 years, New Haven grew quietly, its people building, learning, and healing. But the galaxy outside had not forgotten them. The Galactic Council watched from afar, and what they saw frightened them. Human signals grew stronger. Their ships moved with purpose. Their outposts multiplied. To the Council, this was not survival. It was rebellion. The first real attack came without warning. One night, as Chloe Dunn guided a supply freighter back from an ice-mining asteroid, her sensors screamed. 3 Corthan raiders dropped out of warp just beyond the nebula's edge. They fired not at her ship, but at the hydroponics dome on New Haven's surface. Missiles punched through the reinforced plasteel, and the dome collapsed in a cloud of steam and shattered glass. 23 people died. Among them were Nate Rivera and 2 of his students still tending the fungal crops when the walls gave way. Grief turned to rage. People gathered in the central dome shouting for revenge. Some wanted to flee deeper into the nebula. Others demanded they build warships and strike back. Elena Ruiz stood before them, her face pale but calm. She knew anger would not feed the hungry or heal the wounded, but she also knew they could not stay defenseless. She called Ryan Cole to her quarters. He arrived in full tactical gear, his eyes hard. "We need soldiers," he said before she could speak. "Not just guards. Real fighters." Elena nodded. "Then build them. But remember, we protect our people. We don't become what they fear us to be." That day, the Vanguard was born. Ryan chose 50 volunteers, engineers, pilots, medics, who trained in close-quarters combat, drone control, and emergency response. They wore armor made from recycled ship plating, painted in dull gray. Their weapons were jury-rigged pulse rifles, powered by the same fusion cells that lit New Haven's streets. While Ryan drilled his team, Leo Grant and Marcus Bell worked on something stranger. Deep in the cavern where the ancient symbols had been found, they uncovered a sealed chamber. Inside lay a crystal, smooth and black, humming faintly when touched. Leo connected it to a power source, and images flooded the screen, star systems, weapon designs, and something called a gravity lance, a device that could collapse a ship's hull from kilometers away. "It's not human," Leo whispered. "But it's meant for us." They spent weeks decoding the crystal's data. Marcus built a prototype gravity lance using scavenged parts and New Haven's strongest power core. It was bulky and unstable, but when tested on a derelict freighter, it crumpled the hull like paper. The Council struck again a month later. This time they sent infiltrators, Corthan agents in human disguises, smuggled aboard a refugee ship that claimed to carry survivors from a distant colony. The agents planted explosives near the main reactor. But Chloe, reviewing docking logs, noticed the ship's transponder code didn't match any known human registry. She alerted Ryan. The Vanguard moved fast. They cornered the agents in a storage bay. A firefight broke out, short and brutal. 2 agents died. 1 was captured alive. Under questioning, he admitted the Council had ordered the destruction of New Haven. "You were meant to fade," he spat. Not rise, his words chilled them. This was no longer just about survival. It was war. Elena made a hard choice. She authorized the Vanguard to go on the offensive, not to kill, but to disrupt. Ryan led a team in a stolen Corthan skiff, using the nebula's interference to hide their approach. They sabotaged a Council listening post on a dead moon, frying its comms array with a feedback pulse. Then they vanished back into the gas clouds. Each success bred more confidence. Chloe mapped hidden routes through asteroid fields. Marcus turned old mining drones into remote bombs. Leo refined the algae system to double oxygen output, freeing up power for weapons research. New Haven became not just a home, but a fortress. Then came the biggest discovery yet. Beneath the cavern floor, they found a vault sealed with the same symbols as the crystal. Inside lay a star chart, not of the known galaxy, but of forgotten paths, wormholes, and dead zones the Council had erased from all records. One route led to a system called Kalis, marked with a symbol that meant sanctuary. Leo believed it was left by the same lost civilization that built the gravity lance. "They were exiled too," he said, "and they fought back." Elena studied the chart for hours. She knew following it was risky, but staying put was riskier. The Council would keep coming, harder each time. If they wanted to live, they needed allies, and maybe weapons the galaxy had never seen. She called a meeting of all adult citizens. "No speeches, just facts. We can hide until they find us," she said. "Or we can seek what was left for us by those who stood here before. It's dangerous, but so is doing nothing." The vote was nearly unanimous. They would go to Kayla's. Preparations began at once. The Aurora's Resolve, a refitted freighter with reinforced hull and Vanguard crew, was chosen for the mission. Chloe would pilot. Ryan would lead security. Leo would interpret the ancient data. Elena would stay behind to guard New Haven. The night before launch, Elena walked with Chloe along the upper ridge. Stars were invisible in the nebula's glow, but the ship's lights reflected in Chloe's eyes. "You think we'll find help out there?" Chloe asked. "I think we'll find a choice," Elena replied, "and that's better than waiting to be erased." The next morning, the Aurora's Resolve lifted off, its engines burning clean and bright. It slipped through the nebula's veil and vanished into the unknown. Back on New Haven, life went on. Children went to school. Workers repaired the damaged dome. But everyone looked up more often, wondering what the ship would bring back. The Council thought they had buried humanity in the dark. But in that darkness, humans had found fire, and fire once lit does not go out easily. The Aurora's Resolve returned 3 months later, not with weapons or armies, but with hope. Chloe Dunn guided the ship through the nebula's currents with steady hands, her face tired but bright. Behind her, the cargo hold carried more than supplies, it carried allies. The Jara, insectoid beings with chitinous shells and sharp minds, stepped onto New Haven's surface with cautious grace. They had been watching the galaxy from the shadows, hunted by the Council for refusing to surrender their hive mind autonomy. They saw in humans what they saw in themselves: defiance. With them came the Myrel, amphibious traders from drowned worlds, their skin slick and eyes large. They had lost their homeworlds to Council redevelopment and drifted in hidden fleets for generations. When they heard humans had built a home in the Vale, they came not to beg but to offer. They brought rare metals, bioluminescent algae that glowed without power, and knowledge of old trade routes the Council had tried to erase. Elena Ruiz met them at the landing pad. No guards, no weapons. She offered water, food, and a place at the table. That simple act sealed a bond stronger than treaties. Together they formed the Conquered of the Periphery, a union of outcasts, exiles, and survivors. No one ruled over the others. Decisions were made by Council, but action was swift. New Haven changed overnight. Jara engineers worked alongside Marcus Bell, weaving organic circuitry into human machines, making them lighter and smarter. Myrel medics taught Leo Grant how to heal radiation burns with enzyme pastes from deep-sea fungi. Chloe trained Jara pilots in human flight patterns, while Ryan taught Myrel scouts human stealth tactics. The Conquered was not just an alliance, it was a new way of living, and they were ready to fight back. The Council had grown careless. They assumed the Vale was a prison, not a cradle. Their patrols grew lazy, their supply lines stretched thin. The Conquered struck first at a relay station near the nebula's edge. Jara drones disabled the station's shields while Chloe flew the Aurora's Resolve through a blind spot in the sensors. Ryan and his vanguard boarded the station, not to destroy it but to steal its data core. Inside they found fleet movements, weapon schedules, and, most importantly, the location of a Varelian dreadnought under construction. That ship, the Sovereign's Will, was meant to be the Council's final answer to the human problem. It carried enough firepower to glass New Haven from orbit. Elena gathered the Conquered leaders. "We can't let it launch," she said. They planned a raid unlike any before. The Myrel provided cloaking mist harvested from their ocean worlds. When sprayed on hulls, it bent light and masked heat signatures. The Jara built swarm missiles that could overload shield harmonics. Marcus and his team retrofitted every ship they had with gravity lance emitters, small but deadly. Chloe would lead the strike force. The Aurora's Resolve, now painted in dull gray and black, carried the heart of the mission. Ryan's team would board the dreadnought during the chaos and plant fusion charges at its core. The night of the attack, the Conquered fleet, just 12 ships, slipped out of the Vale like ghosts. They moved in silence, engines cold, comms dark. The Varelian shipyard floated near a dead star, its workers unaware. Then, all at once, the Concord struck. Jara drones swarmed the outer defenses, frying turrets with neural pulses. Myrel mist hid the human ships as they closed in. Chloe flew the Aurora's Resolve straight down the dreadnought's main hangar bay, her hands steady despite the shaking hull. Ryan and his team jumped out before the ship even stopped, sprinting through corridors lit by emergency red lights. Alarms blared. Varelian guards rushed to meet them, but the vanguard moved faster. They fought not with rage, but with precision. Every shot counted. Every second mattered. Ryan reached the core chamber and planted the charges. 30 seconds, he yelled into his comm. Chloe was already pulling back, the Aurora's Resolve screaming away as the dreadnought erupted behind them. The explosion lit the void like a second sun. The victory spread like wildfire. News reached other outcast groups. Mechanical nomads from the Iron Wastes, telepathic refugees from the Silent Belt. They came to New Haven not as beggars, but as brothers and sisters in resistance. The Conquered grew. Back home, Marcus oversaw the construction of orbital shipyards. Built from salvaged hulls and asteroid metal, they floated above New Haven like skeletal giants. Inside, new ships took shape, sleek, fast, armed with gravity lances and Jara shielding. They called them Ascendancy-class cruisers. The first one, the Dawnbreaker, launched with Chloe at the helm. Elena stood on the observation deck as it left orbit. She no longer wore a patched pressure suit. Her uniform was clean, dark blue with silver trim, the colors of the Terran Ascendancy, a name chosen not for pride, but for promise. They were not just surviving anymore. They were rising. The Council sent envoys then, not warships. They offered peace, if humans returned to quarantine, if they dismantled their weapons, if they submitted once more. Elena's reply was short. We offered peace when we were weak. You gave us exile. Now we are strong. The terms are ours. She did not declare war. She did not seek conquest. But she made one thing clear. The galaxy would never again decide humanity's fate. In the shipyards, more cruisers took shape. On the surface, children played near gardens fed by mineral algae. In the command center, Jara and humans planned together, their voices blending into one purpose. The exiles were no longer hiding. They were building an empire, not of fear but of freedom, and the stars once closed to them now opened like doors. The Galactic Council did not take defeat quietly. After the loss of the Sovereign's will, panic spread through their gilded halls. The Varelians demanded total war. The Corthans called for scorched space tactics. Even the quieter species, long used to obeying, began to whisper that the humans could not be ignored any longer. So they gathered their full might, a fleet of over 500 warships drawn from every loyal system, armed with planet-cracking cannons and cloaked assassins. They would crush the conquered once and for all. The fleet gathered at the edge of the Veil Nebula, a wall of steel and fire stretching across the stars. Their message was clear: surrender or be erased. But Elena Ruiz had expected this. She stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Resolve, now flagship of the Terran Ascendancy, her eyes fixed on the sensor screen. Around her, the conquered fleet waited, smaller, yes, but sharper. Jara swarms clung to the hulls of human cruisers like living armor. Myral mist tanks stood ready to cloak entire squadrons. And deep in the ship's core, the gravity lance hummed with power. What the Council did not know was that Leo Grant and the Jara had finished decoding the last of the ancient star charts. Hidden in the data was a network of dormant wormholes, built by the lost civilization long ago, meant for those who dared to rise after being cast down. These wormholes could move ships faster than light, without warning, without trace. Elena gave the order. Not to retreat, not to charge, but to vanish. As the Council fleet advanced, the Concord ships activated the wormhole network. One moment they were there, the next, gone. The Council admirals panicked. Their scanners showed nothing. Then, from behind their lines, the Concorde struck. The Dawnbreaker emerged from a wormhole inside the enemy formation, its gravity lance firing point-blank into a Corthan carrier. The ship folded in on itself like crushed foil. Jara drones poured from human bays, latching onto Varelian cruisers and frying their neural cores. Myral cloaking mist spread like fog, blinding sensors and turning the battlefield into chaos. Ryan Cole led the boarding party this time, not on one ship, but 3. His team, wearing new armor woven with Jara silk and Myrel gel, moved like shadows through enemy corridors. They disabled weapons, freed prisoner crews, and planted charges only where needed. They fought not to kill, but to break the will to fight. Chloe Dunn flew like she was born in the void. She weaved through explosions, her hands never shaking, guiding the Aurora's Resolve through gaps no sane pilot would attempt. She targeted the Council's command vessel, a massive Varelian dreadnought named the Voice of Order. As the ship tried to retreat, she opened a wormhole right in its path. The dreadnought tumbled through, emerging near New Haven, where Marcus Bell's orbital guns finished it with a single shot. Back on the main battlefield, the tide turned fast. Council ships began surrendering. Some even turned on their own commanders, tired of endless war. The Corthan admiral tried to flee, but Leo Grant broadcast a message across all channels. Not in human speech, but in the old tongue of the lost builders, a language of truth and memory. We are not your enemy, Leo said, his voice calm. We are your warning. Empires that crush the weak do not last, but those who lift each other up, they become stars. The words struck deep. Even among the Council, doubt grew. The Varelian Grand Arbiter Zhalrin watched his fleet crumble and knew the truth. They had lost not just a battle, but the future. 3 days later, a white signal pulsed from the remains of the Council fleet. Peace. The meeting place was not Xylos Prime, not a Council world, but aboard the Aurora's Resolve, floating in quiet space near New Haven. Zhalrin came alone, his silver robes dull, his pride broken. He expected to see a conqueror. Instead, he found Elena Ruiz standing not on a throne but at a simple table. No guards, no weapons, just water, bread, and a data pad showing the terms. You could have destroyed us, Jalrin said. We could have, Elena replied, but we remember what it feels like to be cast out. We won't do the same to you. The treaty was signed that day. The quarantine on Earth was lifted. Human ships could travel freely. The conquered of the periphery would be recognized as a sovereign power. And the Veil Nebula, once a prison, would be declared neutral ground, a place of refuge for any species seeking freedom. After the signing, Jalrin looked out the viewport at New Haven below. Lights glowed on its surface. Ships moved in calm patterns. Children's voices piped from the school comms, drifted softly through the speakers. You built this in exile, he said, wonder in his voice. We built it because we believed we deserved to live, Elena answered. Back on the surface, people gathered not to celebrate victory, but to plant trees, real trees grown from seeds saved from Earth. They dug into the gray soil mixed with mineral compost and Jara nutrients and placed the saplings with care. They knew it would be years before leaves grew, but they planted them anyway. Leo stood beside Marcus watching Chloe teach Zara children how to tie knots. Ryan walked the perimeter, not as a soldier but as a neighbor. And Elena stood at the edge of the new grove, her hand resting on the bark of a young oak. The galaxy had tried to erase them. Instead, they had rewritten its story. They were no longer exiles. They were founders. And the empire they built would not be measured in ships or weapons, but in the simple act of planting a tree in the dark and waiting for it to grow.